Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on something we all use every single day, but maybe don't think about: how software actually gets made. We're talking about the blueprints, the game plans that turn a cool idea into a powerful app. So let's get right into it.
Have you ever really thought about it? You get that spark, that aha moment for a brilliant new app. But what's the journey from that idea in your head to something you can actually download from the App Store? It's not magic, and it's not just a bunch of people chaotically typing code. There is a method to the madness.
And that method is called a software process. This is our big idea for today. Think of it like a recipe. It's the structured, step-by-step guide that takes you from point A, your brilliant idea, all the way to point B, a finished working product. It's the map that guides developers through what can be a really complex journey.
Now, what's really fascinating is that no matter what specific recipe or map a team decides to use, they all have to do these four things. First, you've got to figure out exactly what the system is supposed to do. That's specification. Then, of course, you actually have to build the thing. That's your design and implementation. Next, you have to double-check that it does what you said it would do. That's validation. And finally, because nothing stays the same forever, you have to be able to update and change it over time. That's evolution. Every single piece of software goes through this cycle, one way or another.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll start with the two big competing philosophies: to plan everything or to adapt as you go. Then we'll check out three classic models: the waterfall, the incremental approach, and the reuse model. And we'll wrap it all up by figuring out how you find the right process.
Okay, first up, what is a software process? Well, like we said, it's the blueprint. It's what brings order to chaos and makes sure everyone on the team knows what they're doing, when they're doing it, and why.
All right, so at the very heart of all this, there's this really interesting tension between two totally different ways of thinking. Is it better to create a perfect, detailed master plan for the entire project before anyone writes a single line of code? Or is it smarter to just start small, build a little piece, see how it works, and then adapt your plan as you learn more? This is the core debate: plan-driven versus what we call agile.
And here's the best way to think about it. A plan-driven process is like building a house with a complete architectural blueprint. Every single wall, wire, and window is planned out before you even dig the foundation. Success means sticking to that blueprint. On the other hand, an agile process is more like building one perfect room, living in it for a bit, and then deciding what the next room should look like based on what you've learned. Here, the ability to change your mind is the most important thing.
So let's talk about the most famous example of a plan-driven process. It's called the waterfall model. And honestly, the name tells you pretty much everything you need to know. Everything flows in one direction, downwards, from one stage to the next.
This model is the plan-driven philosophy in its purest form. You start by gathering all the requirements, period. Once that phase is totally done and signed off on, you move to design. Once the design is 100% finished, then you move to implementation, and so on. The key rule is you cannot go to the next stage until the current one is complete, just like water can't flow back up a waterfall.
And that right there, that is its fatal flaw. What happens if, way down in the testing phase, the client has a great new idea or realizes they forgot something super important? Well, with the waterfall model, going back is a nightmare. It's incredibly expensive and difficult. That's why this model really only works for projects where the requirements are absolutely locked in from day one and will never, ever change, which, let's be honest, is almost never the case in the real world.
So because of that major problem, a whole new philosophy emerged: the incremental approach. The idea is simple. Instead of trying to build the entire system all at once, why not just build it piece by piece?
And this way of working has some massive advantages. Remember how expensive it was to make a change in the waterfall model? Well, here, it's way cheaper because you're only changing one small piece at a time. Plus, you can get a working version of the software into the hands of your users much, much faster. They don't have to wait a year to see something. They might get the first version in a couple of weeks, which means you get valuable feedback early and often.
But of course, it's not a silver bullet. It has its own set of problems. For managers, this process can feel a little murky. Without that big upfront plan, it can be tough to track progress. And there's another hidden danger. If you just keep bolting on new pieces without a long-term vision, the overall structure of the software can get really messy over time, which can make future updates even harder.
All right, on to our third major approach. This one is all about being practical, smart, and efficient. It's often called the reuse-oriented model.
And it really all boils down to one very simple, very powerful question. If somebody has already built a fantastic component that does exactly what you need, why in the world would you spend all that time and money to build it all over again?
The key term to know here is COTS, which stands for Commercial Off-the-Shelf Systems. These are basically ready-made software parts that you can buy or license and then just plug into the bigger system you're building. It's kind of like using prefabricated walls to build a house. It's just way faster and usually a lot cheaper.
Now, these reusable parts can be all sorts of things. They could be big, standalone systems, or maybe they're collections of code for a specific framework. Or, and this is super common today, they can be web services that you use remotely, like using a service like Stripe to handle credit card payments, so you don't have to build that whole, complicated, secure system yourself.
So, we've met the rigid planner, the flexible adapter, and the practical builder who uses existing parts. This brings us to the biggest question of all. Which one is the best? And that leads us to probably the most important lesson of this entire explainer.
Here it is. There is no single best process. It just doesn't exist. There are only processes that are a better or worse fit for a specific project, with a specific team, for a specific client. A super strict, plan-driven approach might be absolutely perfect for building critical flight control software, but it would be a total disaster for building a brand new social media app.
And this is the truth of how most software gets built today. It's not about being Team Waterfall or Team Agile, it's about creating a hybrid. A huge project might use a plan-driven approach for its stable core foundation, but then use a more flexible, incremental approach for building new features for users, all while plugging in off-the-shelf parts to save time and money. The best teams mix and match to get the best of all worlds.
So, turning an idea into an app isn't about following one single road. It's about choosing from a whole set of different blueprints, different philosophies for how to create something amazing. Each one has its strengths, each one has its weaknesses. The real genius is in knowing how to pick, combine, and adapt them to fit what you're trying to do. Which really just leaves one final thought. Now that you know the blueprints, what would you build?